Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of Reporter's Notebook. I have a new face here with me. Hello, Mr. Jason Boyd, how are you?
I'm fine, hope you're doing well.
I'm doing, for a Tuesday, I'm doing pretty good.
But you know, Tuesday used to be my favorite day of the week, and it kind of still is.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Why?
I think just growing up, there was several TV shows I really enjoyed that came on Tuesdays, and it was kind of a good break from, dull Mondays and such, so it kind of got you recharged, I guess, for the rest of the week before you got the hump day and such. So.
Okay, all right. Well, that's interesting. So we already know a little fact about you before we know what you do. So can you tell us what you do here at WNCT?
Primarily, I'm responsible for all the digital content on the web, on social media. Myself and another digital content producer, Fantasia Harvey, which we've actually had a story on here recently. We are basically in charge of the content, making sure stuff gets posted there. We prioritize things. We edit copy, cut videos, photos, and such. Just working with the reporters, the anchors, and then with our Nexstar, who owns us, as far as getting national content out there. And then we try to socialize it and get it to Facebook and Twitter and outlets like that for the customers, I guess you could call them, to enjoy. And it kind of creates a social engagement that we use to inform people about what's going on during the day.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of wonder who's more busier, either you or the reporters. Like you guys, the people who are behind the digital team definitely have, as soon as you walk in the door, you're on it,
Well, it's interesting because, before I walk in the door, I think you guys are pretty busy because you're out gathering content and stuff. One thing that's always fascinated me, I worked in newspapers and in digital. This is my 32nd year, and I find it fascinating that, you have to go somewhere, you have to meet somebody, and you shoot what amounts to maybe 2 minutes of video. And, we can take our content, we can take that 2 minutes, we can, run 20 minutes, we can run photos, and there's no length or limit as far as that content is concerned. So I think you guys are probably busier than we are, because although we look like we're busy, we're sort of like the thing with the duck, kind of flapping its feet under the water, whereas you guys are just kind of, going around like crazy trying to get stuff and things like that just for a small time window. And that's always fascinated me.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where when you're in this job, when you're in this profession, no matter what part of this profession you're in, you're always in it. And it's definitely, teamwork. So you mentioned you are from North Carolina, is that right?
From Beaufort County, yep.
You're from Beaufort County?
Yes, I am.
That's my favorite county. So tell us a little bit about like where you grew up and your experience in this profession.
Okay, I'm from the eastern part of Beaufort County, a place called Pinetown, which is between, I guess what you call Little Washington, Bath, Belhaven, Plymouth, sort of in that mix. And so I, grew up there. I went to Bath High School and graduated. I actually started in newspapers at the Washington Daily News, where I was going to East Carolina University. I had a chance to go to the University of North Carolina, but I figured it was probably better to go someplace close to home from an education and get that hands-on experience, as opposed to going to Chapel Hill and kind of fighting with everybody else to kind of get my foot in the door. And so I kind of worked my way from there, go into the Reflector, the newspaper in Greenville. I've been to other newspapers. I had a stint in Georgia, where I worked at a newspaper and covered SEC football, which was really quite amazing. We see it on CBS, and it's one thing, but to see it in person is really something else. And then from there, I went to the Sporting News, which is a major global sports organization that was based in Charlotte. And I covered everything from NASCAR to baseball to soccer, tennis, you name it. And then after that, I had a stint at another TV station here down the road, and went to WRL in Raleigh, and now I'm here. So I've dealt with digital for several years now, and so that's something I'm very comfortable with, as far as that bridging that gap between the written part and the visual part that you guys handle.
And you're definitely one of the most experienced people here in this newsroom. We have a few people who are experienced, and so as a young reporter, I'm grateful to have your expertise. Whenever I have a story, I'm always like, can you check over the story before we publish it? Because I'm definitely just starting out in this newsroom, and I really, really appreciate the experience that you bring to the newsroom. Yeah, so how does it feel like to be back in, I mean, you've been all over the place. How does it feel like to be back home, basically?
It's good because it's an area I'm familiar with. We have the running joke that I'm sure all new reporters have to deal with Beaufort not being in Beaufort County. Washington is not in Washington County. Things like that you have to teach people that I guess I take it for granted that I already know about. And so, things like that you kind of learn. But, I know the area. There's several people that work here that have known the area too and are familiar with it. And that just kind of makes it a little bit easier because not only the area that you're reporting, but the people that you're reporting about and covering and such. And so that makes it a little bit easier, I think, as far as just creating that touch, that idea of really knowing who you're reaching out to, because even when I worked in Raleigh, we had an idea about what kind of connected with people. And, coming back here, like I said, from my previous experience, you already knew what was kind of thing that drove people. And so you kind of go back to those things, and those things are successful. People always like to read and see about local content, and politics is big. And, certainly this time of the year with the holidays and such, that's interesting. So it's good to know, I guess, how to reach your customers in a sense. I mean, you guys go out and you interview people and you get to know them. And I kind of feel like maybe I'm a little bit ahead of that, but I don't get to maybe contact and stay in touch with them as much. So we kind of, work together to kind of make that connection happen.
And before we wrap up this interview, from someone who has been in this profession for a long time and who has the experience that you have, there's been kind of a disconnect between news and the audience. Is there something that you want to tell the audience, let them know about how a local newsroom works and how the content is generated and published and written and,
Yeah, and really it's changed on a dime so much. I mean, 5 years ago, we were dealing with, computers that can only do a certain amount of things. And now we all walk around with a computer in our hands every day with a phone. And, it's not like it was in the past where you had to tune in to watch the news and see what was going on. You're pretty much at the control of the news all the time. But there are people that work to gather that news, to get that information, to make sure it's correct, to verify stuff. And so, excuse me, so we're still sort of the, not so much the gatekeepers, but we're still the ones that disseminate the information, help put it together and such. And so that's one thing I think that you still want to let people know is that, even though you do have the power of the source in your hand to get news of any kind, there's still a process about making it happen and getting it and stuff. And that's what our job is, to not only get that information, but, to provide it to you, give it to something to you that you can enjoy.
Right. And I just want to go ahead and wrap this up this interview. And I want to ask everyone who's tuning in to feel free to reach out to our social media pages about some of the things that you're wanting to see. Of course, it's going to be reviewed by our digital content managers, Jason and Fantasia. And that's, usually how we generate our story ideas too. So feel free to do that. And I just want to thank you, Jason, for joining me on this edition of Reporter's Notebook. And I just want to say, welcome to the WNCT newsroom, officially.
Thank you. If you have complaints, contact her. If you have compliments, contact me.
Right, so. Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and
Thanks.
We'll see you on another edition of Reporter's Notebook. Good night, everyone.